Three people who want to lead the NDP, ready to hear from you. This is Alberta at Noon. I'm Judy Aldous. Well, in January, Rachel Notley announced she was stepping down after almost a decade as leader of the Provincial NDP.
Short of having, raising, and of course regularly debating with my family, the opportunity to serve this party and this province has been the honour of my life.
And that kicked off the leadership race. There are now 4 people who want to replace her, and today we have 3 of them in studio to answer your questions. 7 minutes after 12 o'clock. Welcome to the show. There were 5 people originally, but early this morning, Union leader Gil McGowan pulled out of the race. And so our plan was to have Gil join us along with Jody Callahoo-Stonehouse for a second program. Jody remains in the race, and so we will have her on the show at a later date. Now, voting for the new leader starts on the 3rd of June, and a winner will be announced June 22nd. And so today we have 3 candidates in studio. These are the 3 people with the most endorsements from NDP MLAs. In Edmonton, Sarah Hoffman. Sarah has been an MLA since 2015. She was Deputy Premier and Minister of Health under the Notley government. Sarah, hello. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Judy.
And in Calgary, Kathleen Ganley and Naheed Nenshi. Kathleen has also been an MLA since 2015. She served as Justice Minister for 4 years, from 2015 to 2019. Naheed was the Mayor of Calgary for 11 years. He is a newcomer to the party, and they are both in our Calgary studio. Hello to both of you.
Oh, hello.
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 And for you listeners, you're already phoning, but if you want to get in the queue, the number to call is 1-866-468-4422. It's toll free. If you have a question for one or all 3 of the candidates, the number to call 1-866-468-4422. You can email us. We're alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And I should also note, of course, you're listening to us on CBC Radio or on our Listen app, but we are also on the CBC Alberta YouTube channel today. So all 4 of us, we have to smile, look good for television as well as radio.
Oh, man.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about party memberships. You guys sold a lot of them. 85,000, a 5-fold increase since December. I want to know who sold the most.
That is classified campaign information, Judy. You're starting off with a tough
You're
interview.
the new guy. Was it you?
Well, I'll just say that, in January, the party had about 8,000 members. There's now 85,000. I think that is amazing. I think a movement is happening here. And I know all of the candidates have been out there spreading the message out to different kinds of Albertans. And I think that's amazing. And I would argue, I have no data to back this up, but it's probably the case that at this moment, the Alberta NDP is the largest provincial party by membership of any party in Canada.
And I would, I know people keep calling us a love fest, but I would echo that sentiment. I'm so excited to see the massive growth in the membership, and I'm very excited by my own particular riding. Got to give her a shout out for being now the highest number of NDP members in the province.
Okay.
Are we in it, or are we in varsity now?
We're in varsity
Oh, we're
now.
just past the
Yeah,
border.
we're just past.
Your Mountain View, yeah. And this Love Fest, is that the 3 of you, you mean, or within the whole party? Yeah. Okay, Sarah Hoffman, what does it say to you that you've sold, the party has sold something like 70, 80,000 memberships over the last 5 months?
Yeah, it's been a very exciting time. There are a lot of people who, we had so many volunteers in the last provincial election who didn't have memberships. And this year they leveled up and they bought a membership, and we're thrilled with that. I'm really excited and in my hometown, I grew up in Canuso, a very small village in northern Alberta, and we have the most members we've ever had there as
That's
well
awesome.
now. So it's really exciting.
Okay. All right. Number for you to call, 1-866-468-4422. Why don't we go straight away to the phone lines? We'll have Randy join us. Randy's in Calgary, and he's on the phone with us. Randy, hello.
Hello.
Hi. You joined a few years ago, did you?
Yeah, I've been an Alberta NDP member for about 2 years.
Okay. And what's your question? Do you want to direct it at one of them, all of them? What are you thinking?
It's sort of broad. It would be mostly for Mr. Nenshi.
Okay. Jump right in.
Yeah, so if the Alberta NDP is going to form government in 2027, we know we need to win over people who've never voted for us before, people who've principally only ever supported whatever flavor of the day of Alberta Conservatives. And at the debate on Saturday, I heard Mr. Nenshi refer to the people who've historically not agreed to us as the monkeys on the other side. So I'd like to know how this approach, how name-calling the team from which we're trying to shift support to us, how's that going to help us grow a winning team? And is that not alienating the people whose support we really need right now?
Mm-hmm. All right, great question, Randy. I'll just add a little context. The context was Naheed Nenshi talking about having been to question period, I think, just once, looking across the aisle at the UCP MLAs and referred to them as monkeys. So, what would you say to Randy?
I was probably too polite, frankly, Randy, because, one may clutch their pearls and say, oh, how insulting. In reality, what we should be doing is interrogating, why is it that someone who's at question period for the first time is exposed to that kind of behavior? Belittling, insulting, angry behavior, a lot of yelling over the women on the NDP side. It was very insulting. And quite frankly, and I've talked to a number of caucus members about this, look, the temptation is give it back to them. And then we look like monkeys too. And so one of the real hard parts is how do we manage that better? Because I think Albertans deserve something much better. And, there's a bunch of people on the Conservative side who are like, oh, he called all Conservatives monkeys. No, what I said was that the behavior in question period, looked like that. And frankly, I was probably being a bit too polite.
But even one of your supporters thinks that you may be alienating people.
No,
so is that the right tactic
I think
to take?
What we got to do, and Kathleen will tell you, and she's right, that we have to give people something to vote for. But at the same time, we have been altogether too polite in not calling out the kind of behavior that we're seeing that frankly treats Albertans as like we're stupid. And, they're trying to get things over on us, the dissembling, the lies, and the just bad behavior. And I think question period is just a tiny microcosm of that. It happens everywhere. In every legislature and every parliament, it's gotten much worse. But what I experienced that day, and I don't know if Kathleen or Sarah would agree, but what I experienced that day was I was embarrassed for the kids, on school visits there.
And what I meant, Kathleen Ganley, I'm interested not so much in what was happening in question period that day, but what you thought when you heard this term monkeys used in the debate.
Yeah, I would agree that it's challenging in there, right? They do tend to be loud. They do tend to talk over. My theory of the case the entire time has been that we combat that by providing people with a real offer, right? So I do think that in the last election, we did a very good job of prosecuting the case against the UCP.
I agree.
I think arguably we did slightly too good a job of prosecuting the case against the UCP.
So why?
Well, because I think that people need more than that. They need more than just prosecuting the case against the UCP. They need us to tell them what our ideas are, and specifically on the things that are most important to them. So the most number of emails I get into my office tend to be about, I can't afford my groceries, I can't afford my rent, my mortgage payment's gone up. Real economic stress and anxiety, and I think that's what we need to speak to.
And Sarah Hoffman, can I just, because sticking with the debate, if we can.
Sure.
You said something Saturday. You said we can't run the same election we just lost with a new leader telling everyone how awful Danielle Smith is and expect different results. What did you mean by that?
I meant that I'm running a campaign focused on healthcare, climate, and housing because I've been knocking on doors all over this province over the last decade as a proud New Democrat. And 1.2 million Albertans didn't bother to vote. And I want to give those Albertans a reason that will directly impact them and make them excited to vote. I know there's a lot of teachers today who are bummed out, and students as well, that there's indoor recesses happening all over northern Alberta. And I want to make sure that they can breathe the air and play outside on a hot summer's day or a lukewarm May day when there are these awful fires in TP Creek and everywhere else that are causing horrific air quality. So we need to act serious on climate. We need to make sure we're investing in healthcare, bringing 1,000 new doctors here, and making sure that we're also acting on housing, which is absolutely, I agree with Kathleen, the biggest financial pressure that people are facing. And we haven't seen enough bold policy from the NDP to motivate that 1.2 million Albertans. We only lost by 1,300 votes. So this is absolutely within reach. And I don't want to run the same campaign we just lost. I want to run one that is bold and exciting and brings new people in. That's how we'll win.
Okay, so who do you need to attract voter-wise? I know Naheed Nenshi on the weekend again, you said you needed more men to vote NDP. What was that about?
Yeah, there's a number of ways to cut the demographic pie here. And as Randy points out, we need to attract many, many Albertans who've never voted for us before. into the party. And that means two things. So as Sarah points out, there's a large number of people who didn't vote in the last election. The voter turnout was not great. In my experience has been that we took voter turnout in Calgary from 30% to well over 50 in my first election and kept going. So there is a way to attract folks who are not currently voting. There is a way to attract folks who have traditionally voted Conservative but have found that that party has left them. And part of that is calling out where that party stands now, but also putting forward a more positive, very vigorous defense of the kind of Alberta that we want to put forward. And then there's a number of demographic things. And a shout out to Gil McGowan, who has brought so much to this race. I had no idea that Gil McGowan, I only knew him by reputation, was such a policy nerd, like me and Kathleen and Sarah. But, you know, he's done a bunch of analysis that really shows that the NDP has become the party of more educated folks, and that we're missing out on people with diplomas, certificates, high school education, and so on. I think that's right. And there's also a gender thing. We're more popular with women than we are with men. The party is now more popular with ethnocultural communities than mainstream communities. So there are a bunch of different target markets, if you like, that we need to be able to go towards, and the same exact strategy probably won't work for them all.
All right. This is Alberta at Noon. I'm Judy Aldous. I have three people in studio with us today: Naheed Nenshi, Kathleen Ganley, Sarah Hoffman. They are all, of course, running to replace Rachel Notley as the next leader of the Alberta NDP. And so they're with us today to talk with you. The number to call, 1-866-468-4422. There is a queue, so just be patient and try and have the more sort of specific your question, the sort of the greater the chances that you'll get on. That's my little tip to you. 1-866-468-4422. Alberta at Noon at cbc.ca is where you email us. We'll go straight away to a caller from Edmonton. Caden is with us. Caden, hello.
Good afternoon.
So you're a party member, obviously. You can vote. Do you know who you're going to vote for?
No, and that is part of my question today, actually.
Okay, great. Jump in.
So I follow this leadership race very closely. I and the other 85,000 something members are now in the very difficult position of having to choose which incredible candidate to support. I've decided that I'm going to vote for the candidate who I think is best positioned to form government. And in order to make that decision, I like to ask each of the candidates, what do you see as the win condition or thesis for victory in this next election?
Great.
All right, thesis for victory. I love it. But your thesis can't be 10,000 words, okay? We're going to try and keep this tight. All right, Sarah Hoffman, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, thanks, Caden, so much for calling. Healthcare, climate, and housing. There are so many people who didn't bother to volunteer last time who were thinking about it. And we did have well over 10,000 volunteers in the last provincial election, but I want to double that. And I want to give them something that they are excited to talk to people about on their doorsteps, and people are excited to hear. There is a woman that I think about often. She's a single mom. She lives in Calgary East, a seat that we lost by not many votes. And she told me she wasn't going to vote because she was going to focus on her 3 jobs that day instead of going out to vote because she was stressed out about her rent. And that's why I'm proposing rent control. That's why I'm proposing building co-op housing and social housing, permanent supportive housing, and affordable housing, including student housing. That's how we're going to motivate people to get out and volunteer, and that's how we're going to motivate people to get out and vote. And when I've been a long-time New Democrat, healthcare. I was the first NDP health minister in this province, and I am very excited to be able to bring those same values that we had when we were in government back to the Premier's office. Thank you.
Naheed, your thesis, was that the term? Thesis to victory. I loved it.
And I caught your warning, Judy. You obviously know me. I think there's 2 things. There's an internal piece and an external piece. So the internal piece has actually been a bit surprising to me as I've been meeting members from across the province. But it really has to do with starting now to train organizers, activists, volunteers, and movement folks in every single riding. It has to be an 87 riding strategy to really make sure that the party is battle ready for the election. There's a lot of ground war stuff. I hate using these military metaphors, but there's a lot of stuff that the party, frankly, has not built up across the province, I think, as well as we should have. I think that the party's path to victory in the last election was much too narrow. Essentially, we had to win every single riding in which we were competitive to form a bare majority. So we have to build a much broader path. That's a lot of internal stuff. But then also, we have to go to Albertans with vision that they get excited about that really reflects their values as Albertans. And I believe that we have to spend the next couple of years listening, co-creating that vision with Albertans, with great ideas on the table, but talking about what kind of Alberta they really want. So they see us as not people who are saying, why don't you believe in these good things that we believe in, but rather as really representing who they are. And the good news is that since 2015, since Sarah and Kathleen were elected with Rachel Notley, the party does in fact represent the values and views, I think, of the broad swath of Albertans. We have to do a better job of helping Albertans see they have a home in it.
I just need to defend our members here for a second, because those 8,000 people who are members on January 1st, it's because they give every single month and they've been doing it for years. And the leadership is just one part of this party. There are people who've been building this party for decades in 87 ridings. So I really need to defend those people and the work that they've been doing over decades.
All right, Kathleen Ganley, your path to leadership. That's what Caden wants to vote for the person he thinks can win the next election.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Caden, for the question. This has actually probably been the animating part of my campaign, is what I think we need to do to win the next election, because I think that's the most important thing we can be focused on, because a precondition to doing anything else is governing. So I think in the last election, we did some things very well. We had thousands of volunteers throughout the province knocking on doors, and that is how you change hearts and minds. You don't change them on social media. You change them with those individual conversations, usually in a relationship of trust. That's the most effective way to do it. But when those volunteers get to those doors, they need a little more, right? So I think what I heard from people throughout the province who were doing this work, and I think that's really important feedback on the psychology of the population, was that when they got there, they had a lot to say about what was wrong with Danielle Smith. But people kept asking them, but what are you going to do, right? And specifically, what are you going to do on the thing that's most important to me right now, which is to say how I keep a roof over my head and food on my table, right? So the people whose top issue was education or healthcare, they mostly voted with us. What we need is to bring along the people whose top issue was what they would define as the economy, which is to say, my costs are too high, my wages are too low. And I think that we answer that with very specific proposals on exactly those things, which is what I'm doing in this campaign. I'm talking about wages, costs, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Okay, I want to read an email from Richard. And if this is kind of a yes or no, I think,
oh boy.
I'm sure you're going to find ways to nuance it. But Richard says, currently, as a member of the provincial NDP, I'm automatically made a member of the federal NDP, and I don't want to be associated with the federal party. Should the provincial party break ties with the federal NDP? I know, Sarah Hoffman, you have said you don't think we shouldn't be focused on that. Where do you stand on that issue, Sarah Hoffman?
I think Richard should unsubscribe from the email list, and if anyone calls, say, please stop calling me, and I'm confident they will. They don't want to spend their time talking to people who don't want to talk to them either. But I know that I'm very proud of the fact that we have the Canada Pension Plan, Medicare, that when we run elections, people from all over the country who are excited about NDP values being on the ballot want to be a part of the movement. And many come and volunteer. And I don't want to distance myself from the great things that the NDP's done.
Okay. And what about Richard, who says he doesn't want to be associated with it, but he does want to be associated with your party? Does that change how you think about it at all, Sarah?
I think he should unsubscribe from the emails. They'll take him off the list and they'll stop calling him. And that's pretty simple, I think. He doesn't need to vote federally for a party he doesn't want to. And if he doesn't want them to contact him, I'm confident that they will stop.
Sarah, Kathleen Ganley.
Yeah, so what I have said, and this is part of a larger members charter about how we interact a little bit differently with members. I think we've had some
This is not
growing
yes
pains.
Or no. This isn't a yes or no answer, is it?
Well, my answer is that this is a question for the membership. Constitutionally, part of the NDP constitution is that this is a question for the membership. And what I will tell you is that I've heard from people who say that the idea of leaving the federal party makes them feel like they're turning their backs on their brothers and sisters, right? People who have always believed the same thing for a really long time. And I think those people deserve respect and they deserve to voice that opinion. I've also heard from, sign crews in Medicine Hat who say that they get Trudeau-Notley Singh Alliance yelled at them out the window and that it makes them feel unsafe working for our party. And so I think they deserve also to be heard.
But, so what does that mean? You'd put it to a vote? Is that what you would do?
I would allow it to come forward to a convention. I actually don't think that I can bring it forward. It would have to be a riding association.
But you don't know how you'd vote?
Well, yeah, I think I will wait to hear the arguments. I lean towards the federal NDP in its current iteration isn't doing much for electoral success. And I think at the end of the day, the most important thing has to be how we win in 2027. And I think that a lot of people here in Calgary and in rural ridings where we need to pick up seats will tell you that they feel like this is not helpful in that
But because
cause.
they're not going to help you win, or because you don't believe in the federal NDP?
I share a lot of values with the federal NDP. I believe in pharmacare. I believe in Medicare. We share a lot of values. We differ somewhat on views on the economy and how we best bring people along to address climate change. Whether we should yell climate emergency at them or whether we should talk to them about the things that they see, touch, and feel and about the economic opportunities. So we have a difference of opinion there, but I do agree with them on a lot. And I think every person should get to make that choice for themselves.
Naheed Nenshi, where do you stand on this?
I hear about this a lot from members, old members and new members. And what I've really understood is, as Kathleen says, this is a decision for the membership, ultimately not for the leader. But the challenge is that we've been talking about it for so long and it's distracting. And it's important to surface it and make a decision and move forward. I'll just say this. I worked really hard with Rachel Notley to get that pipeline built. And that was a huge problem with the federal NDP, and I had lots of fights with the federal NDP. So as a relative newcomer who's looking at this with fresher eyes, I ask myself, why would you want to affiliate yourself with an organization that you don't control that may not always have the same values as you? We also need to attract people who vote for every party federally. So my bias, but I have to talk to a lot of members, is that it costs more than it helps us to have that affiliation. Most provincial parties across the country are not affiliated with their federal arms. Even the UCP and the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada are not officially affiliated. I think we can be great on our own. We can be independent, but ultimately the members will decide. But what I say is we have to surface that conversation and make sure people can have it. And it's not enough to say, well, just unsubscribe from the email list, because you're actually saying to people, you're making a decision when you join the Alberta NDP, and we want you to feel good about that decision.
All right, Naheed Nenshi, Kathleen Ganley, Sarah Hoffman, all in studio with me today. We only have an hour, which is really unfortunate because we're almost at the half-hour mark, but covering a lot of ground, so we appreciate all of your questions. 1-866-468-4422 is the number to call. Why don't we go straight to another email from Amy, who says, Mr. Nenshi, if you don't win the leadership, are you going to run as an MLA?
Well, if I don't win the leadership, one of these three remarkable women are going to win the leadership. And I would really ask them, do you want me around? I got a pretty big voice. But what I will say is that I am absolutely committed to using whatever limited skills I have to make sure that we defeat the UCP in the next election.
Do you want him? Would you? I'm assuming you're going to say yes?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I've said it many times. I'm excited
back at you, Naheed. Are you going to run? Are you going to run? That was very skillful, but would you run?
If they want me to, I really will. And I'll just say to them, think about it, because I do take up a lot of oxygen. I got a pretty big voice, but I'm here to help you in whatever way you want me to help you.
So you would run again? Right. Everybody said yes. You'd run again?
Yeah.
Do you know what riding?
Well, there's great NDP MLAs all over Calgary as it stands. So, it all depends on how things play out over the next 3 years. I personally have a fantastic NDP MLA, Parmeet Singh Boprai, in my own riding, and I hope he continues in a very long career. But there's lots of ridings in Calgary. Do
you want me to give you a hint as to what we're going to be talking about in the next half hour so you can all think about it? All right, we have a beef farmer who wants to know how you're going to increase support in rural parts. We've got minimum wage, wondering family doctors, all sorts of things. So that's what's ahead on the program. Sarah Hoffman, Kathleen Ganley, they'll stay with me. Naheed Nenshi as well. They are three of the four people running to replace Rachel Notley as the next leader of the Alberta NDP. Jody Callahoo-Stonehouse also in the running. We will have an opportunity to speak with her on a future date. Gil McGowan, if you haven't read the news, Gil was in the race up until I think probably 12:01. He had to withdraw his support. It was just, a lot of money goes into running one of these campaigns, and Gil just felt like he'd done a lot of work but wasn't able to raise the money. So 1-866-468-4422 is the number for you to call. Emails go to alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And we are on the CBC Alberta YouTube channel today. It's a new thing for us. You can watch us live there. We will also, of course, this whole program will live on our YouTube channel later on. So if you know people who may be at work or aren't able to hear the whole thing now, they can access it later on today. All right, Tahara Fruzen is with us in the newsroom, and she's here now. Tahara, hello.
Hello, Judy. A wildfire southwest of Fort McMurray continues to burn out of control. The flames are now 16 kilometers from the community. Residents of Wood Buffalo remain under orders to be prepared to leave at a moment's notice. Some rain and favorable winds are in the forecast and are expected to provide some reprieve for firefighters on the front lines. And fire crews are also battling an out-of-control wildfire in Grand Prairie County. In its last update, Alberta Wildfire reported that it was burning 4 kilometers east of the town of TP Creek. County and Alberta wildfire crews are working on a fire guard in an effort to contain that blaze, which was estimated to be about 1,400 hectares in size. And it's official. An effort to recall Calgary Mayor Judy Aldous has fallen short of the required threshold. Earlier this year, business owner Landon Johnston started gathering signatures on a recall petition. Today, the city clerk says Johnston collected more than 69,000 signatures, falling short of the amount of signatures required. And all signatures sampled were declared invalid under provincial legislation. Gondek calls the recall effort a distraction, and she's glad it's over, but says under the provincial recall legislation, the city is left paying the bill, which she says is costing Calgary a little over $30,000 to verify the process. Gondek says if proposed new provincial legislation on municipal governance is approved, the cost of any future recalls would be covered by the province. And turning to weather, Calgary today, smoky conditions, slight chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon, high 18 degrees. Tomorrow, mainly sunny, high 19. Edmonton today, hazy conditions, 60% chance we'll see some rain showers later on today. Hopefully that'll take away some of that haze, high of 20 degrees. Tomorrow, clearing skies in the morning, high of 20. Right now in Edmonton, 17 degrees, air quality index at a 5. Calgary right now, 15 degrees, air quality at a 3.
I know. What a rough beginning of May for people in the northern half of the province, eh?
Unfortunately, we're doing it again.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Repeat of last year. Well, maybe not quite. But anyhow, so all those of you who are maybe, I'm not too sure, sort of hunkering down inside and you're up north, we're thinking of you, hoping for some rain and cold temperatures and the right winds. Anyhow,
definitely.
Yeah, thanks for this, Tahara.
Thanks.
It's Tahara Fruzen. I'm Judy Aldous, and this is Alberta at Noon. And we are having our first NDP leadership phone-in today on CBC Radio, on the CBC Listen app, and on our new CBC Alberta YouTube channel. There are now 4 people in the running after Gil McGowan dropped out earlier today. And again, we had planned to have Jody Callahoo Stonehouse on with Gil for another phone-in, but instead we will, of course, Jody is still in the race, and we will have her on at a later date. But in studio with me today, the 3 candidates who have the most endorsements from NDP MLAs. In Calgary, Naheed Nenshi, Kathleen Ganley. In Edmonton, Sarah Hoffman. And so to join us on the radio to ask any or all of them a question, call our toll-free line, 1-866-468-4422. Emails go to alberta@noon@cbc.ca. We won't be able to get through all of your emails. I'll just let you know right now. There's a lot of repeat sort of questions as well, but we do read them all. So even if you don't get it on now, it sort of helps us in our coverage of these stories. So we appreciate hearing from you. 1-866-468-4422 is the number to call. Alrighty. Are we ready to get back at her?
Ready.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Alex. Alex is in Edmonton. She's on the phone. Hello, Alex.
Hi there.
Hey, what's your question?
I have a question about the minimum wage and about what the candidates here are going to do to increase that, or if they are going to increase it at all.
Okay. Kathleen Ganley, you want to start us off?
I sure do. So the basis of my campaign is that we need to cut people's costs and raise their wages, that's the sort of economic offer we need to provide to the people of Alberta. And so I think the second policy I put out was on minimum wage. Were we in government now, because this is the economic circumstances will obviously change in the next 3 years. Were we in government now, I believe that what the current government should do is raise it to 16 now. 17 next year, and then index it to inflation. So in the last 5 years, inflation has gone up 18%. Minimum wage hasn't gone up a dime. So I think that that is a really critical piece moving forward.
Sarah Hoffman, where do you stand on minimum wage?
Well, 17 isn't a living wage today. So I will share in the love fest of saying driving down costs is one of the biggest things that we need to do. So that's why I'm proposing a really aggressive public build, affordable housing build to make sure that we can help people live in this province, in the cities that they work in the towns that they work in, working one full-time job and being able to afford to live there. So it's important that we drive down costs and that we increase the minimum wage. And I would work with the community. One of the things I'm proudest that we did when we were in government is that we cut child poverty in half. And a big part of that was because we raised the minimum wage to $15 from 10 and change before that. So we need to be aggressive on minimum wage, but we also need to drive down costs to keep things affordable for families. And I'm looking forward to hearing what Naheed has to say, because I remember when we formed government that he was not very supportive of us increasing the minimum wage and did some advocacy against it. So I'm keen to find out if you've changed your tune on that. And,
well, I'd love to know about that advocacy, Sarah, because I think your memory is better than mine, because I don't remember that at all. I do remember one Rick Bell article in which he tried to torque my stance on the minimum wage, but I also remember standing with Rachel highlighting economic studies that actually showed that an increase to the minimum wage at that time would not, in fact, decrease frontline unemployment. So if you got a stat other than a Rick Bell article on my advocacy, I'd love to see it. But in reality, the challenge is that the UCP government took away the escalator on the minimum wage. So where we went from a very competitive minimum wage, we are now the second lowest in Canada, behind only Saskatchewan. With, as Kathleen points out, massive inflation. So I think the smartest thing to do is, yes, do an increase. I don't know what the UCP will do in the next 3 years, so I don't know what the number is going to be. But I think the smartest thing to do is to do an increase and then put in a legislated escalator that ties it somehow to maybe the CPI, though in years when the CPI is 18%, that kind of goes out of sync a little bit.
Consumer Price Index for those.
Sorry, the Consumer Price Index. Maybe you tie it to the growth in average wages in Alberta or something. But I think you put in an escalator that increases it over time.
So if we do that, and we're already so far behind on a living wage, we're never going to catch up. And those people who are going to work 3 jobs right now are going to have to keep working 3 jobs.
We definitely need
so
a one-time increase. We need a one-time increase.
And my memory is excellent. Thank you for highlighting that. And there are more than one article, that's for sure.
Well,
and
bring them up, Sarah. Bring them up anytime.
Sure. We can do that on June 2nd, or we can do it right now. But your Google is good and my memory is great.
What is it that you're trying to tell party members when you say that, Sarah Hoffman?
I didn't think an NDP mayor would question helping low-income people be able to afford their rent and pulling children out of poverty. I did not expect that. And
because it didn't happen, so it's good that you didn't expect it.
Okay, but what I'm trying to get at is look, this
is a debate we've been having about what's a true New Democrat. Does a true New Democrat ask a question like, why 2018? Why $15? What's the study behind that? Can we agree on where we go? And if there is a purity test that says you have to have agreed with every single thing that happened between 15 and 18, I'm going to fail that test.
The question I'm asking, though, is do you believe that the minimum wage should be a living wage?
Well, we in the city of Calgary, in fact, created a living wage policy in our procurement for both the city and for our contractors. So I think my record speaks for itself.
I don't think it does. That's why Alex asked this question. That's why I'm asking this question too.
So Sarah Hoffman, what are you suggesting then? You're saying a living wage. What is that for people who don't? Sounds great.
So do you think the minimum wage should be $23 immediately, Sarah?
I think that we have to drive down the cost of living, which is why one of the biggest things we need to do, instead of talking about small tax cuts of $1 a day, is invest in meaningful, affordable, permanent, supportive, and housing tied to income, specifically, not just saying below market. That isn't good enough. A lot of the municipalities have been saying it's affordable if it's just 10% below market, and it's not. So I want to drive down the cost of living while increasing the minimum wage. And that's my commitment, to get the minimum wage back to a living wage, because that's the only way that we're going to help everyone everyone out of poverty, that young people who are going to post-secondary can earn enough money over the summer to not be crippled with debt for decades after they graduate. We need to get cost of living and minimum wage back in line. So it's going to be a dual effort on my part of driving down the cost of living and increasing the minimum wage.
I want to jump in on this purity test.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before. Do you think you're being subjected to a purity test by long-standing NDP members?
Only by one. Sorry, Sarah, that was catty. No, not at all. In fact,
is that going to get you in trouble to say that and then say sorry, it's catty?
No, because Sarah has tried this on a number of occasions with me. But in reality, I talk to members across the province, and I've talked to so many long-term members. My very first endorsement was someone who's been a member of the party for 50 years, who has run for the party in the past. And they are saying, no, we want to welcome more people. And I think we have to welcome more people. And when you listen to the conversation on minimum wage, we're actually all saying the same thing.
No,
and to look for
you're
these
not
different.
saying that you care
Sarah,
about a living wage being tied to the minimum wage.
Well, Sarah, I just asked
that.
you. The living wage in Calgary is about $23 an hour. Would you take the minimum wage to $23 immediately?
I want to take the cost of living down while we increase the minimum wage.
Right, so you wouldn't do it either. So we're saying the same
So
thing.
you're not. Are you committed to tying the minimum wage to a living wage? That's the
Are
question.
you? I just asked you that question,
Yes,
and you
I
just
am.
said you would not.
Hey, people, I'm driving the bus here. So, Sarah
Thanks,
Hoffman,
Judy.
I want to go back to this issue around, because this keeps coming up. Is there some sort of, is the long-standing membership of the NDP forcing new members into some sort of purity test? Is this tent big enough? You know, you've got 70,000 new members. Is that a concern for you?
No, I'm thrilled by all of the new members, and I want them to be thrilled and excited about the campaign that we run in the next election. One of my campaign co-chairs, when I met him, Nathan Ip, was a member of the Progressive Conservative Party. I was a member of the NDP. We worked on the Edmonton Public School Board together. I was the chair, and he was a trustee colleague. And he is one of my co-chairs because he realized that his values were my values. This isn't about how long you've been a member. This is about what your values are and what you're going to bring to the leadership. And we can't run the same campaign we already ran and lost. We need to be specific about policy, and we need to inspire people like that mom working 3 jobs because the minimum wage is insufficient for her to pay her rent. That's what we need to do.
All right, let's talk about rural Alberta. We had a number of people. Someone says, I'm a lonely progressive living in rural Alberta. My question, and someone else was a beef farmer, so I'm going to try and tie these two things together. This is Tim in Westeros. My question is, when subsequent Conservative governments close rural schools, cut emergency rooms, close health units, slash municipal transfers, et cetera, why don't rural voters turf governments who take their votes for granted? Well, that question I'm not sure we can answer, Tim. But what we can answer is how to grow the base in rural Alberta. You know, if you take out Banff, Kananaskis, there's nothing, right? No NDP seats. Kathleen Ganley, how can you specifically speak to rural Alberta?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to take a stab at Tim's question, actually. So I have a theory on this, as I do with many things, because I do think that we need to run a good, solid campaign in 87 ridings. And I do think it's about more than just this election. I think we need to build a movement that can govern for the long term. I think we do that in a couple of ways. One of them is my members' charter that talks about how we treat rural members, how we sort of invite people into the tent, how we use local knowledge a little bit differently. Because while the values in rural Alberta are the same, the context tends to be different. So, for instance, in Calgary, we have schools bursting at the seams, right? In rural Alberta, it's often the case that the problem is, you have one teacher for 3 grades. And so things like a computer science class, there's no specialized teacher for them, right? So that makes it harder to get into university. So that is definitely one of the pieces. But I think part of the reason we haven't always resonated in rural Alberta, and we do have volunteers throughout the province who knock on doors and who do provide us with this feedback, that when they get there, they need an offer on the economy, right? That's what people are concerned about. They're concerned about how to keep a roof over their head and food on their table. And so we have to have that offer, and we have to go out and do the hard work. I wish I had a better...
I mean, what is the offer on the economy? Because it's not just about minimum wage. It's about building...
Yeah. So I've put out a few things. So one of them is an offer on public auto insurance, because that'll bring down auto insurance costs. One of them is about
but that's not
price gouging.
That's not economic growth, is it?
It can't. So right now, when people say the economy, what they often mean is their wages versus their costs. Like, I understand that technically on an academic definition, that isn't what the economy means. But most people, when they answer polls, when they tell us that their issue is the economy, they're talking about, will my mortgage pay my rent? will my will my job pay my mortgage, right? Do my wages cover things, right? So I think something like ending price gouging in the electricity system, this is very easy. It really is massive profits for corporations over the costs for average people and for small businesses too, right? Most small businesses are on that floating variable. I think they renamed it from the RRO to the rate of last resort, as though that somehow makes it less confusing. But that's a cost for a lot of people, right? It's not just individuals, it's also businesses.
Naheed Nenshi, how would you grow the support in rural Alberta?
Well, I'll just very quickly say that this affordability question is a really important one, and it's an affordability question for everyone. And, $600 million in rent geared to income housing is a great idea. It doesn't impact a huge swath of the community, and particularly not in rural areas. And so I've spent a lot of my time over the last 2 months outside of Calgary and Edmonton, speaking to people in mid-sized cities and smaller communities about some of their issues. The first thing I'll say is you're not a lonely progressive. The New Democrats in very conservative ridings like in Highwood still got a quarter of the vote, 26% of the vote, 30% of the vote in all of these places, even in places where people were saying, I'm scared to put up a New Democrat sign because I'm the only one. So the first thing is to help people know that they're not alone. The second is to work with people in communities to help convince their neighbors to build a neighborhood. After the debate the other day, someone came up to me and said, I live in such and such a place. I've signed up as a volunteer, and I'm going to spend the next 3 years convincing my neighbors. So that part of the conversation has to happen as well. But, progressives, we have this habit of saying, well, why can't people just understand that conservatives are bad for them, that we're better for them, that we will do the things they need to do? There was a famous book 25 or 30 years ago called What's the Trouble with Kansas? Trying to answer this question. To me, it starts by listening, by really understanding what people's concerns are, and by reminding people, as Tim did and as the other writer did, that the Conservatives haven't done much for you lately. And, in particular, I think that Peter Lougheed, who was the professor of me and Danielle Smith at one point, would not be comfortable with this version of the conservative movement. I think Ralph Klein wouldn't be comfortable with this version of the conservative movement. And I think that helping people understand that is part of the conversation, but as Kathleen says, having an offer for them that makes sense, that is authentic, that is built on what we're hearing from them is also very important.
Sarah, I do want to hear your answer to the question of rural Alberta, but can I just throw a quick email in just because it adds a little bit more?
Sure.
So this is Doug, who says, being a member of a right-leaning family has its challenges. I hear over and over again in rural Alberta and in the last election that the NDP failed to answer the overarching question of how they would reassure everyday Albertans that they have the ability to manage a budget. So anyhow, I just want to throw that in from Doug. He says there's a lot of mythology in his mind out there that the NDP just spend their way into oblivion, and how would these leaders address that? I don't know if you want to fit that in at all, Sarah, into your answer to how to build the support in rural Alberta.
I appreciate that. The three candidates who are here today, I grew up in small town northern Alberta. And what brought us there is the fact that there was a teacherage and an opportunity for my dad to become a principal instead of a teacher. So we had affordable housing tied to his income, and we had an opportunity for him to grow in his career. And that's one of the reasons why I actually left Canuso, is to move to Edmonton to pursue post-secondary. And I didn't know if I was going to stay here, if I was going to move to an even bigger city, or if I'd go home. But there weren't a lot of opportunities at that time in the career path that I've ended up in my hometown. So we need to focus on things like healthcare, because people are leaving rural Alberta because they can't get family doctors. They can't access the care they need. When I was a health minister, I went to Lac La Biche to visit because they had the lowest per capita patients to doctor ratio of anywhere in Alberta, and I was excited about that. But when I was there, I also met somebody who had to crawl up the stairs to the dialysis unit because it was a bus that was parked outside of the hospital to get his dialysis treatments, and that wasn't dignity. So I worked with that community to make sure that we brought dialysis into the hospital. I'm incredibly proud of that. So it's about showing up and working with people on local solutions. Banff-Kananaskis is our only rural riding, and it's the one that I worked with in the lead up to the last provincial election for over a year to help recruit volunteers and fundraise. And the formula there is the same as it's been in Edmonton-Glenora, which was a conservative stronghold. when I won it the first time, and now it's seen as one of the NDP strongholds in the province. So getting out, working with local folks to solve local problems, and it's the same in rural Alberta.
Here's a listener who says, I've lived in Red Deer most of my life, and I think the only chance any NDP government has to win over Alberta rural voters is to move from the typical NDP stance of supporting unions, higher wages, etc., to appreciating that this province is overwhelmingly built on private enterprise. Just going to leave that there. All right, Anthony's with us now. Anthony's on the phone. He's in Calgary. He's called our toll-free line. Hello, Anthony.
How you doing?
I'm well. I love it when you call in, Anthony. You've always got great targeted questions. So what's it today?
So today it's about doctors. The UCP's done a pretty good job at scaring away a bunch of doctors over the last 5-6 years. I would like to know what each individual candidate's roadmap to success is, and success being measured as that every person in Alberta has access to a family doctor.
Okay. Roadmap to success for family doctors. All right. Kathleen Ganley, you want to start us off?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I think that's a great question. And I would say my roadmap to success, how I would measure success, is that all Albertans have access to a family doctor and that they can get in for an urgent or emergency issue within 3 days. And I think this is possible. So the first thing is we have to change the compensation model, because right now it's forcing doctors to practice in a way they don't like. And professionals won't stay when they're being forced to practice in a way
fee for service?
So the fee for service right now kind of steers them towards 10-minute medicine. And they don't like 10-minute medicine.
Some do, some don't. Well, not 10-minute medicine, but some like fee-for-service, some don't. But sure. So you're saying salary for family doctors?
So what BC has done is actually, so in addition to us driving them away, and not just by the fees, by the fact that we have a government who has been attacking them, right, who has been attacking their character. People don't like their character attacked. But also BC has changed the compensation model so you can run on lines of patients. That being said, we don't have enough family doctors in Alberta right now. So we have to have them practicing in teams. We have to make better use of nurse practitioners, of physician's assistants, of all those sorts of folks to make sure that way each doctor can have more patients, and that's how we expand access quickly. But it's also about ensuring that people who are here, who have the skills, can get those skills recognized, that they have a clear path for that, and that we're training more people here.
So just something that Anthony can sink his teeth into, looking at because there was a new agreement signed with family doctors that family doctors agreed to, but you like the BC model. That's something that you would... The BC model
okay. is much better.
Okay, Naheed Nenshi.
So very briefly, I want to say that both Kathleen and Sarah have put out some very thoughtful plans on this issue. One of the challenges here is that for the first time ever last year, we couldn't fill the family doctor residency positions. And that's really telling, because it means no matter how much you're going to pay, people don't want to practice family medicine in Alberta. So a lot of thinking about how we respect that profession again, how we bring people in, people who have many choices, who are very well educated, who could go anywhere in North America to practice. We have to think hard about how we bring international medical graduates into the family medicine. I think the new kind of agreement and the idea of rostering that Kathleen is talking about is very smart. But we do have to be careful. Just in the last 48 hours, it's come out that in Ontario, the system of rostering is leading to physicians removing patients from their roster if they go to a walk-in clinic. Or if they go to someone outside of their roster, U.S.-style HMO, health management organizations. So we have to be very, very careful that the agreements prevent these unintended consequences. But it really is about spending time with the family doctors who currently exist with medical students to determine what will get them into family medicine and to make sure that the incentives are there also to practice in rural areas. And we're running out of time.
Okay, all right. Sarah Hoffman, specific ideas on how to on improving family medicine.
And I was a health minister when healthcare was boring in Alberta, and my commitment's to make healthcare boring again. And one of the big ways that I'm going to do this is that I've already been working with the experts, including Dr. John Meddings, who is the dean at the Cummings School of Medicine and the chair at the U of A before that. And we absolutely have developed a strategy to have 1,000 more doctors here in Alberta in my first term as Premier, and 3,000 nurse practitioners and physician assistants. It's tangible, it's real. When I was in Lac La Biche visiting, one of the reasons why they had such a good ratio is because people liked working here and they trusted us. And when we talk about how do we manage the budget. We absolutely did it. When we were renegotiating with doctors, they gave back their retention bonus because they knew we didn't have a retention issue when I was the minister, and that they wanted to work with me to reinvest that money in improving the system. So I am if you want to hit the ground running with healthcare, electing the person who is the first NDP health minister as the next premier, I think is the way we're going to get that done. And I'm so excited to work to make sure that every patient, also the Calgary Cancer Centre, I should make sure that we highlight that, needs to be well staffed as well.
All right, rapid fire, can we? Someone wants to know if you've ever walked a picket line.
Yes.
Yes.
I think so, but lots of protests.
All right. If we've heard that Naheed has said that he would run if he doesn't win this leadership, he'd run as an NDP MLA. Sarah, Kathleen, if Naheed wins the party leadership, will you stick around and run again in the next election?
Absolutely.
Yes. I'm here for a good time and a long time.
All right. When I said rapid fire, you guys are taking this to heart. All right. If you become leader, what's the first thing you'll do?
Repeal the ban on wind and solar.
Okay.
Now, if you become leader or if you become premier?
No, but leader first, yeah.
Win the next election.
Win the next election. Well, the very first thing to do is we'll sit down with the caucus and talk about the path forward and how we're going to be singularly focused and disciplined on how we win that next election, and then take that conversation to the members.
First thing you do as party leader, Kathleen.
Yeah, get together and start building that economic offer, both with caucus members, but also with long-time and new NDP supporters throughout the province.
Can you guys all get along regardless of who wins?
Yes.
100%.
Yeah? Okay.
What you saw today is as bad as it's ever been, and that was not bad. No.
I have maybe a better memory than you do on that one, but it was in a past life.
All right.
Yeah, well, we did get there
Sarah's
on the 911
not going to let this one
dispatch,
go,
Sarah.
hey? Okay. All right. So we have a few weeks, right? What are you all up to? Where are you? You're headed north, Naheed Nenshi, to...
Well, we'll all be north later in the week in Athabasca and hopefully, fires willing, in Grand Prairie. But just talking to people across the province and making the case that the NDP is actually very good with budgets, very good with the economy, and would be better with me as leader.
I'm door knocking in Edmonton this afternoon, and I'm in Lacombe, Ponoka tonight.
All right. Take care of your lungs. All right, Kathleen?
I would say challenging that old UCP narrative that you have to give more to your boss to get ahead in the economy. But yeah, we will all be up north this week. I think we've all been, it feels like we're all traveling around in a VW minibus together. We spend so much time listening to each other, so it's been great.
That's quite an image. All right.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Thank you.
Boy.
Oh, no. I don't want to see the dance routine at the end of that one.
It's a little more like Drag Race.
Yeah. All right. Kathleen Ganley, Naheed Nenshi, Sarah Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you.
All right, they are all running to replace Rachel Notley as the next leader of the Alberta NDP. Voting for the next leader starts June 3rd. A winner will be announced June 22nd. And I'd like whoever wins to join me June 23rd. Yeah? All right, the fourth person still in the race is Jody Callahoo Stonehouse. I have been messaging with her. We've been talking, and she will join us at a later date now that Gil McGowan is no longer in the race. All right, well, if you know somebody who wasn't able to hear the whole show live and maybe you want to share it with them, the podcast, of course, will be up soon. This program will remain on the CBC Alberta YouTube page as well, so you can direct people there who couldn't watch it live to go there and both listen and watch it. And thank you for all of your input. As I said, we'll read through all of your emails. We got so many more than we were able to get, and also phone calls. I apologize, all those of you who are still waiting on hold. But we had a great conversation, and it's because of your input, so appreciate that. I'm Judy Aldous. Have a great Monday afternoon.